Good afternoon, everybody. This is the Pass Ball Show, brought to you by JohnPielli.com. Happy to be with you on Monday, the 8th day of January 2018. Lots of different stuff we're going to get into. We'll go over the football Sunday, a little bit of recap, talking about the point spreads and stuff like that. A couple other topics, but before that, I'm happy to be joined by a man that's been involved in baseball for many years. He's served as the general manager for the San Diego Padres and the New York Mets, and is currently the senior advisor of player personnel for the Baltimore Orioles, and that's Joe McIlvaine. Joe, this is John Pielli over in New Jersey. I appreciate you having a couple minutes.
Okay, John. Good to talk to you.
Hey, Joe. First question I want to ask you. In regards to the world of scouting, was this something that you always aspired to do, even back to your days as a player?
No. I think when I finished playing, I played 5 years in the minor league. Finally, you realize that probably you're not going to get to the big league, so you can either stay and be a career minor leaguer or maybe look into something else. When that period came for me in 1973 and 74, I thought, well, I'm going to write to the different various clubs, the ones that I think are the best organizations. So back then, I got my typewriter out and typed a resume out, typed a letter out, and asked teams if they would be interested in a manager, a coach, a scout, a front office guy. I just kind of left it indefinite. I just wanted to stay in baseball because I loved it. And I wrote to about 15 teams, and I got one positive response back to the Orioles. And they said, come down and interview. And I lived in Philly. It was just down in Baltimore, so it was an easy thing to do. And I went down. I had 2 interviews down there, and ultimately was hired by Frank Cashen and Joe McIlvaine and Dave Ritterbush, who were 3 guys at that time who were the general manager, the director of player personnel, and the scouting director. So they wanted to try something new. Back in that time, this was 1974, most of the area scouts were older gentlemen, and they wanted to try something new and try a couple of young guys. So they took myself and a fellow named Bob Engel and a guy named Tom Gamboa and hired the 3 of us as kind of an experiment, I guess you could say. And so we were all put into the scouting end of it, and that's ultimately how I got started off the field.
Now, in regards to what you started out doing, what did your earliest job consist of?
Well, my earliest job was I moved to Florida, and I was responsible for the states of Florida and Georgia, and that was 1974. So that's how I broke in with the 2 big states at that time. But the next year, in 1975, this is a little history, the Major League Scouting Bureau began. And what the Major League Scouting Bureau did was it caused a severe cutback in each team's scouts. I think the Orioles at that time had about 20 scouts, and they cut back to 7 scouts. And the Bureau was going to be the area people for the most part, and then the Orioles people were going to cross-check those people and decide on, who to pick. But so ultimately, my second year as a scout, I had Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and since I spoke Spanish, I was given the responsibility for all of Latin America. So, for a second-year scout, a kid just 2 years out of playing, that was quite a responsibility.
Nah, listen, man. Now, as you're in that spot, I'm sure you're eager. You're looking to continue your career in baseball. Did you feel like at that moment that this was going to be the future for you? Did you feel like you're gonna be involved in this for a long time at that moment?
Well, I was hoping that would be the case because I just love the game and I love being around it, and I frankly wasn't sure what else I would want to do more than be involved in professional baseball. So for me, it was kind of a dream come true. We weren't getting paid very much at the same time, and I was married. We tried to make ends meet, and somehow we did, but it wasn't easy there at the beginning with, running around quite a bit and just trying to learn from a lot of the wise scouts who I worked with. Again, I said most of the guys were, my father's age or my grandfather's age, and they saw how eager, I guess, I was, and they were very good about explaining things to me when you would ask or question or challenge you, and that's how you learn the game, because everybody thinks when you are a player, you've learned all there is to learn, and you ask players that after they get off the field at the coaching, managing, or scouting, asked him 5 years later, I said, how much do you think you knew of the game when you finished playing? He says, well, I knew some, but I didn't realize how much learning there is and continues to be.
And once again, John Pielli, joined by Joe McIlvaine. The last couple of years, I've been down at the baseball winter meetings, and most recently we were in Orlando. And one of my favorite events is the Scouts Dinner, and it's great because you see so many people that have so much different experience in the game and can tell stories from years upon years upon years. Is there anything that comes to mind when you think of interactions with maybe an older scout that somebody was able to tell you a story or something about the game from years before?
Gee, that's a good question, John, and I don't have one answer or something like that. All I can tell you was the older guys really wanted to school you as much as they could, and sometimes I studied the history of the game, so when they would mention players, they played with or against or managed with or against or whatever, I would say, well, tell me about him, because I was eager. Was he what they said and all that kind of stuff? And I think they liked that, and I think they would share things with me as a result of that. But I can't give you just one, story that comes to mind, on that front. But it was always, I was always grateful to those fellows, many of whom, most of them are gone now, but, there were just, a lot of them were great ball players, and a lot of them were big league managers, and it was just a pleasure to be able to have the opportunity. I guess the one guy that kind of really stuck out in my mind that I thought was one of the finest people I'd ever met in my life was Buck O'Neill. And, he was an older scout at that time, too, but he really was wonderful. When I got the opportunity to sit with Buck O'Neill, it was like sitting at your grandfather's feet.
Now, listen, everything that I've heard about Buck O'Neill is just speaks, kindness and almost royalty in a way that he presented himself.
Grandfatherly, and if you've ever watched Ken Burns' History of Baseball series that he did, Buck's in it quite a bit, and the charm and the warmth and all just come across right on the screen. If people didn't know Buck O'Neill, if they watched Ken Burns' thing, they'd just feel like, wow, what a special person.
Yeah, Buck O'Neill is everything that is great about the sport of baseball. And all you have to do is, like you said, just listen to him talk about the sport for a minute or two, and you see everything that's great about the game.
That's right. And there's plenty like him. I mean, but when you ask me about who's the first one that comes to mind, it might be him.
And Joe, obviously, you were hired by Frank Cashen. You spent many years working for him and with him. What would you have to say about your experience working with Frank and what he meant to you in regards to the game of baseball?
Well, Frank was different than a lot of executives because of the background he had. He had been a reporter for a newspaper. He had run a racetrack. He had run a beer company for the owner there at the Orioles. He was really well versed in many things outside of the game, and I think his perspective of the game was better than maybe a lot of the baseball lifers, who he could draw upon so many sources and was really an astute businessman as well as a good judge of talent. And, I was honored when he offered me the director of scouting job in 1980, because I had worked for him with the Orioles only for 2 years, and he had left the Orioles as the general manager and gone back to the brewery to work for Jerry Hauptberger in the brewery. And then in 1980, he and Roland Heeman started working in the commissioner's office, and they were the ones who began the NUP plan, the non-uniform player personnel pension plan, for which every scout is most grateful. And Frank was the one that did that. And then the next year, he was hired by Doubleday and Wilpon to be the executive vice president, general manager for the Mets. And then when he got that job, I guess I was one of the first calls he made. I guess I made an impression on him in Baltimore, and he offered me the scouting director's job, which I accepted.
Now, going back to that time, Joe, what did you think about the organization and where it was going and the opportunities that existed going forward once you took that position with the Mets?
Well, Frank had a history of success in Baltimore too. He had a lot of teams that, he hated. It was funny for Frank because in 1969, of course, the Orioles were the big favorites to win the World Series, and the Mets beat them. So here he comes 10 years later. He's the general manager of the Mets. So I guess it was ironic in that respect, But we just had to rebuild. We had pretty much of a last place team, and we just started from scratch. He wanted to build from within. So we started right with the drafts, and we had some good drafts. And I think that I concentrated quite a bit as scouting director on taking young players, high school players, Latin American players, junior college players, small college players. And if you look at my drafts over the 5 years there, I didn't take too many major college players because I wanted to take and make the organization young and have them develop. You had confidence in your development people that were going to be able to take this raw player and make him into a major league player. And you have to feel that way with your people. And that's what we did. And the majority of our team that ultimately won the World Series were homegrown, except for a few big guys that we traded some of the homegrown players to get, like Gary Carter and Keith Hernandez were two examples of guys we traded our own players that we had developed for them. And that's what you have to do as an organization. It has to be a lot of development from within. And maybe you pick up a piece or two or three from the outside.
And once again, John Pielli joined by Joe McIlvaine. Now, in regards to the world of scouting, obviously the game has changed a little bit, but there still is just as much of an importance now as there was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago in regards to scouting. In your best description, how would you describe the importance of scouting as it applies to the game in 2018 as opposed to years ago?
Well, it's probably that there's more zeros behind the salaries of players now.
Yes.
You make bigger mistakes. If you make a mistake and you have bigger, you're given more credit probably than you should be when you do the right thing. But it still comes down to judgment, and you have to judge the whole player, not just his ability on the field, but you have to judge him as a person on a ball club, and how you project and how well you think he's going to become, and what do you think you have here. And you can't be afraid to take chances. And I'll give you a good example of this. In 1982, we had the 5th player pick in the country, and we were down to 2 guys. We had Dwight Gooden, and we had Sam Horn. Now, the selling point for Dwight Gooden, in my opinion, was I said, this guy's going to win 20 games in the big leagues. Well, little did I know it'd be 3 years later, but this was a high school kid who was 17 years old.
Yeah.
Sam Horn was a guy who had a lot of big league time, but he had more raw power than Darryl Strawberry. And the people who saw him, including myself, thought this guy's going to hit 25, 30, 35 home runs, maybe drive in 100 runs. He's just going to be a run producer, at a position that demands it at first base. So you're sitting there at number 5. What do you take? You take a guy, you're picking between beauty queens. Do you want to take the guy who you think is going to drive in all the runs, or do you want to take the pitcher who's going to win 20 games? Well, I'm the one who had to make the choice, and I was a former pitcher, and I was taking the pitcher. And that's exactly what happened there, And it's not always that you make the right decision, but in that case, it worked out pretty good.
Now, you obviously had a chance to, have influence, if not make, certainly times where you made the picks yourself. Was there any one pick that comes to mind in regards to somebody that you believed so much in and ended up kind of disappointing you in what they ended up becoming?
Probably Eddie Williams. Eddie was the 4th pick in the country in 1983, the next year, and he got to the big leagues. He played some in the big leagues. But, he went to the same high school as Ted Williams. They were calling him the Black Ted Williams, when he came out of school, and he was going to be this and he was going to be that. And he could really hit. There was no question about the hitting, and he had a strong arm. He was a little rough as a third baseman, but figured that would take care of itself in time. But he never became the impact player, I guess you could say, that you thought he was going to be.
Listen,
you're asking me about one guy.
Yeah, no.
One that just came to mind.
Yeah, and I tell you, it's such an inexact science, and I'm sure you know it as well as anybody. The skills you could see, and obviously the biggest key I would think, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, is when you look at a player, isn't it projectability as far as what you see a player could end up becoming?
Well, that's what it is, and that's where you have to sign your name on the dotted line too, beside the player, and say, I think this guy's going to be the guy. I think this guy's going to be really good. Or I think this guy's a fringe player, but I think he has a chance because of his makeup to make the major leagues and be a contributor. Obviously there's different levels of players, and when you scout, you put a grade on a player, and it's anywhere from 20 to 80. 20 being the guy who might get a cup of coffee in the big leagues and be lucky, and 80 would be the superstar, the guy that's going to be a Hall of Famer. And most guys fall in between, obviously, that you're looking at, but what you have to try and decide on every player you submit for draft is where do you think he is in that range of 20 to 80? And you have to stick your neck out, and it makes for interesting meetings a lot of times when you have four scouts in the room, and you're discussing one player. And two guys really like this guy, and two guys really don't like this guy. And, you get into some debates and pounding on the table, all kinds of things, pointing of fingers. But that's what you want. You want to find out what the guy really thinks. Even in organization meetings, when we used to do organization meetings with the Mets, I used to hope that there would always be one guy who didn't like a guy and five guys that liked the guy. You say, all right, what don't you like? And then he gets up and hopefully he takes a stand and says what he thinks. And then, of course, the other guy. Debate is good. It's really good because it brings out feelings, and particularly the guys that have been with them 140 games, when the manager and coach have been with them 140 games, they see the good, the bad, and the ugly. When a scout comes in, he sees him for 5 or 6 days and rates his ability, and that's what he's giving you. And it's very important to have a combination of the two when you're trying to decide who to protect in the draft and who to give the best chance to in spring training the following year. You need the input of the manager and the coaches, but you also need the input of the scouts.
No, absolutely. And once again, John Pielli joined by Joe McIlvaine. Two more questions. One of them's a piggy up off of what we were just talking about. Obviously, you've spent a lot of time scouting, and you've been around a lot of other scouts. Is there one or maybe multiple scouts that stand out to you that you felt just had that knack for being able to see, projection in regards to players better than most of the other ones you ever seen?
Oh, yeah. Some of them even became general manager. I think Pat Gillick is probably one of the best you're going to find, at judging players. But there also is the thing that you'd have to honestly say that certain scouts are really good with pitchers, and certain scouts are really good with hitters, and certain scouts are really good with outfielders or infielders or catchers or whatever it might be. It's really hard to find the scout that is just good on all aspects, and that probably is what stamps one guy better than another guy. A lot of times the guys who are so good maybe in the one area, you put them in player development. If they're really good on the hitters, maybe you make them a hitting coach, rather than even a scout, But I think that the best scouts, obviously, were the complete scouts. And it's the same with ball players. The best ball players are the complete ball players. They're not just hitters that can't field. They can help you in any aspect of the game to help win the game. And I think that's the same without mentioning names. But I think that's the key thing, is being able to be versatile enough that you can scout hitters and pitchers equally as well.
Now, in 1991, you ended up taking over as the general manager of the San Diego Padres. What would you say during that time was the biggest adjustment you had to make?
Owners. We had 15 owners in San Diego who had never been in baseball before. And it was very difficult to try and, I guess the word is, educate them to what we do in baseball as opposed to what maybe goes on in their business world or in their world they've come from. They came from all different aspects. And I think that for the first year or so they were ready to do that. Then the second year they felt like they couldn't make a profit or they worked through Major League Baseball. I don't know exactly what happened. They never told me, but we had to dismantle the team, and we had a pretty good club. We had 92, we made that trade in 91 for McGriff and Fernandez. That was half of our infield. And then in 92, we made the trade for Sheffield. He was our third baseman. And that year in the All-Star game, 1992 All-Star game, 5 of our 8 starters were on the All-Star team.
Yeah.
And the very next year, you were being ordered to trade them, which was really a difficult scenario, and it caused me to finally resign and just say, I drew a line in the sand when it came to Gooden and McGriff and Sheffield. I said, I'll trade other guys, but not these 3. And they said, well, then we're going to have to get somebody else. So that's when I left, and ultimately was lucky that the Met job came open, and I got that one.
Now, just last question. Moving forward, you have a chance to look up to people as in regards to helping you along the line and giving you good advice and stuff like that. But on the other side, once you get experience and you've been around for a while, there's people that kind of look up to you. Is there anybody that comes out to mind in regards to somebody maybe you took under your wing as you went through your many, many years in baseball?
I guess I could best say it this way. When at one time I had 7 guys that had worked for me, either played or worked directly alongside of me or in the organization, who became general managers at the same time. And I think I looked at my own way of running a team as kind of an instructive one. You always wanted to help people and make them better and challenge them. You always wanted to hire people who you thought were smarter than you were, because, you can mold them a little bit more. And guys like Terry Ryan and Jack Sorensic and Jerry Hunsaker, John Barr, a few that just come to mind that have really had great success in the game of baseball. And I think it's because, you let them grow. Let them make mistakes at times too, just because they're going to learn from that, it's going to make them better. And I think that's probably, if I was looking at myself and what you just asked me to do, that's probably what I maybe did best, was ultimately let people grow.
Yeah, that's awesome. Listen, Joe, I really appreciate you having the time. It was great getting a chance to chat with you, and hopefully get you on the program sometime in the future.
I hope so again, too. Thanks.
Hey, take care, Joe. That was Joe McIlvaine, the former Major League General Manager with the San Diego Padres and the New York Mets, a guy that's been involved in baseball for the better part of 40 years. And, he works right now as a senior advisor of player development for the Baltimore Orioles. And like I said, from the days of working for Frank Cashen and the many, many executives that have succeeded, that have worked with him. He means a ton to baseball, and you could tell just by talking to him how much the sport means to him. For a guy that pitched in minor leagues and ends up figuring out at some point he's not going to get to the majors. He has this fire and this passion to want to get involved in the game any way he can, and he's certainly the game has benefited for his many, many years of experience. Once again, this is John Pielli, Passball Show. Happy to be with you the 8th day of January 2018. The telephone number, if you want to be involved, is 732-364-3598. A couple different things we're going to talk about. I'll talk a little bit about the BCS championship game a little bit later, and obviously a huge game. If you think about the world of college football, it really is, and obviously for common sense reasons, it is the Super Bowl of college football, but also has the ability to bring out so much more out of the casual fan than most other sports do. Because you think about the Super Bowl, yes, there are people that are not football fans that are hanging out at the Super Bowl party. You may say the NBA Finals would be kind of similar to that as well. There'll be people that are there that aren't necessarily big-time basketball fans but are watching. The difference in regards to college football and the championship game, there's so much more intrigue for non-college football fans than there is in any other sport. And I find it fascinating because there's people you'll be over at the coffee table or the water cooler, like I always reference here on the Passball Show, and there'll be people that'll be asking questions and talking about a game that they've seen last night that was probably different from a game that they've seen in a long time, because they probably haven't seen a college football game the entire year. Or maybe the last college football game that they've seen was the one that was, a year ago for the last national championship game. And it's nothing to take away from the diehard college football fans. I mean, obviously the ones that have the knowledge, the ones that know everything about the sport, the ones that follow it week after week and are going to be able to analyze, this game that we're going to see and talk the soup and nuts from A to Z about everything that's going to happen, all the tendencies, all the coaching decisions, and everything that's involved in it. Good for them. But what stands out about the college football national championship game is the fact that it brings so many other sports fans into it that may not follow it all the time, but for that one night, for those couple hours, they're engaged. It's not like watching a Super Bowl and eating some dip and having a beer while you're in the background while the game's going on. It's not like people that are waiting for the halftime show and aren't watching the game whatsoever. These are people that are not diehard college football fans, but they're watching this game as if it means something, and they really are intrigued in what they're seeing on the television. I did want to spend a little bit of time, and we'll talk a little bit about the NFL playoffs, and what I'm looking at, and I keep looking at these point spreads, because I tell you, I'm doing these picks every week, and one of the things that stands out in regards to doing picks, I don't want to be just some schmuck that's picking games. I'm making sure I got money on every single one of these games. So I'm picking games that are going to win me money or lose me money. And the big difference between winning money and losing money is how does the game finish, number one, but also number two, what is the point spread coming in? And the games as they were picked, I picked your four winners: Tennessee, Atlanta, Jacksonville, as we hit the halfway point here on the Pass Ball Show. Once again, this is John Pielli. Your number, if you want to join the program, 732-364-3598, 732-364-3598. But, looking at the way the games are picked in regards to the bettors. The point spread is sitting up there, and if you're not familiar with the way the system works, I mean, maybe you've done the weekly pick'em, a series of games, just pick the winner. Whoever has the best record ends up winning some money in your little, your little pool that you got amongst your friends or your coworkers. The point spreads, really make the game worth betting on or not worth betting on. And it's not just, hey, Tennessee's playing Kansas City. Who do I think's going to win? Kansas City is given, they're favored by 8.5 points, or they were last week. Because of that, if you're going to put money on the Kansas City Chiefs, the Chiefs got to win by 9 points or more. If they win by 8 points, you lose. So the Chiefs could win the game, but you in the end may end up losing because they didn't cover the spread. So the way the games were picked straight, I was right on each one of them. The first two games I was picking on Saturday, Tennessee and Atlanta, I felt, honestly, that the Chiefs were going to win the game. I thought the Chiefs were the better team. I thought they had a better offense. I think if you put the combination of Alex Smith, Kareem Hunt, Travis Kelce, and Tyreek Hill, I think they have the ability, or had the ability going in, to create more damage and make things a little tougher for Tennessee. The one thing that worked out for them is Travis Kelce got hurt. And you could see the way the game changed. Once Kelce's injury ends up taking place and he goes to the locker room and you find out that he's not going to return, because the Titans were having a problem. Defensively, yes, they were able to stop the run. And I thought that was one of their strengths. They were able to stop Kareem Hunt. I felt like they were going to be able to do that going in. But, from a passing standpoint, when they're trying to defend Kelce and Tyreek Hill, it was hard for them to be able to double team one of them and single team the other. So once Kelce was out of the equation, and you look up at that point, Kansas City's up 21-3. They're marching the ball down the field, throwing all these different passes and routes and crossing patterns and stuff. Tennessee's not keeping up with them. So once Kelce gets hurt, all of a sudden, from a defensive standpoint, they start focusing on Tyreek Hill. and they were still able to stop the run, the game changed. And I tell you, when that game was 21-3, to the time after, it was like you were watching two different football games. It was a little more of a struggle. Both teams were having more of a tough time moving the ball downfield, but the fact that the Titans were able to believe that they could stop this prolific Kansas City offense, because when they're clicking on all cylinders, look at what they did in New England in the first week of the season. They certainly have the ability to put up points, put up a lot of yards, create some bad matchups for the defense. It seemed like from a confidence standpoint, once they realized without Kelsey, they were able to stop the Kansas City offense, all of a sudden you saw the best out of Tennessee, and it impacted both sides of the football. Offensively, they were playing with a little bit more confidence. Now, I looked at Marcus Mariota, and I thought he played the game okay. Certainly wasn't as bad as Blake Bortles or Tyrod Taylor in the other AFC game, but it looked like, especially early in the game, there was times that he was overmatched. He was thinking too much. He was making some bad throws. But once the confidence kind of built in with the entire team, when they realized defensively they could stop the Kansas City offense, it turned the game around. And once Tennessee started coming back in the game, I said, hey, if defensively they could stop this Kansas City offense and continue to do this the rest of the game, I think the Titans are going to win. But if I'm going to tell you that I thought the Titans were going to win beforehand, I'd be lying to you. Because the Kansas City Chiefs with Travis Kelce in there the entire game, I think it's a romp. I think they end up blowing the Titans out. And you know what? If I thought that Kansas City was going to win, but they weren't going to cover 8.5, they probably would have covered it with a healthy Travis Kelce. The Atlanta game, I thought the Rams were favored by 5.5. I thought that was too much. Atlanta's been playing a lot better. I think that their team has finally come together. They're ready to make a run in this postseason. So, I mean, if LA would have won that game, I was thinking 2 points, 3 points, something like that. So I thought it was an easy pick. Take the Falcons getting 5.5 points. Falcons end up winning that game outright. The two Sunday games I thought were very tough to call. And you could have said, hey, I knew who was going to win. But tell me this. You're watching Buffalo and Jacksonville, two teams that can't get out of their own way in regards to moving the ball down the field. If you thought Jacksonville was going to win, I tell you, about halfway through the first quarter, I realized I lost money. Because I'm watching, I say, yeah, Jacksonville might win this game, but are they gonna even score 9 points? Are they even going to score 10 points to cover the spread in this game? I mean, that game was 3-3, seemed like forever. And when Jacksonville finally scores that touchdown, Bortles throws a pass to the tight end over the middle. All of a sudden, you're like, wow. It was like they just scored 40 points at once. That being said, they were up 7. I didn't feel there was any chance that they were going to be up by 8, up by 9, or up by 10. But at the same time, I didn't believe Buffalo was going to do anything either. So that was a tough game to call. You could say, hey, I thought Jacksonville was going to win. But man, covering 10 points, that was a lot. But it ends up being 7, so it was close enough that I'm sure there was even money betting on both sides of the equation. Finally, you got the Carolina-New Orleans game, which looked like, up to a certain point, that New Orleans was going to be able to cover 6.5. They almost did. A little bit back and forth. The late touchdown that the Saints got to go up 31-19 looked like that could have very well been the final. Then they would have covered. But, you got Cam Newton. The energy that he's got, he's destined and possessed to get his team down the field, not only to get a score, but to hopefully get himself in a position to win the game. So I was worried about that. And he got the team downfield. They scored that touchdown to make it 31-26. From that point, now you're in a rough spot. New Orleans wants to run the clock out. They're not looking to throw the ball down the field. So they end up playing it safe. By playing it safe, they gave the Carolina Panthers another chance, and they were able to hold off. And I tell you, the one thing that stood out about New Orleans and the reason that I like the Saints this year, they play a little bit of defense now. They haven't been able to do that, and that's been pretty much has destroyed them over the last several years since they won their Super Bowl. A team that has so much talent on offense, but their defense stinks. They've been able to stop teams. They got a good secondary now. And I tell you, looking at the NFC, I look at two teams that played this past weekend, and I say you got to give them as good of a chance as anybody. Atlanta, New Orleans. I know Atlanta's got the Eagles next week, which as we get towards the end of the week, we'll do Pielli's picks again. It's going to be tough to pick Philadelphia. I tell you, I've given them every opportunity to make me believe in them. And I tell you, once Carson Wentz got hurt, that team kind of went downhill. Kind of wasn't the same. Nick Foles is getting an opportunity. And I said this last week. He's had an opportunity to win himself a job as a starting NFL quarterback next year for somebody. And he's got one more chance to do it. This weekend, if the Falcons run all over him, and he gets nothing done offensively, when he's essentially been given the keys to a Cadillac, he's going to have a hard time being a backup for anybody. But I tell you, it's going to be tough. You look at New Orleans, you look at Atlanta. I know Minnesota's getting a lot of publicity. The possibility of the Super Bowl being played in Minnesota with the Vikings there would be historic. But I tell you, the NFC is looking pretty strong in regards to the teams matching up against each other. The AFC, listen, man, I don't know why they're even going to play the games this Sunday. Titans, whatever the line is, I'd be shocked if the Titans gave the Patriots any sort of fight this weekend. And then you got Jacksonville, who was barely able to move the ball, playing up against Pittsburgh, who you know from an offensive standpoint, they're going to bring something. So Jacksonville has to play their absolute best game defensively, but you can't trust them to score anything. I'm looking forward to watching the NFC games a lot better than I am the AFC games. So once again, we're going to end the show a little bit early today. I've been getting over a cold. We'll be back with you tomorrow, 6 to 7 p.m. Last point I want to make, you got LaVar Ball out there really continuing to make the case that he is the worst nightmare in regards to thinking about that parent that's literally sitting there, standing behind their kid, and just won't go away. I got no issue with LaVar Ball saying whatever he wants to say. That's, you know what? Somebody gives him the microphone, somebody gives him the publicity to be able to speak. He's got the right to say whatever it is that he wants. But I tell you, he's getting to a point where he is going to single-handedly destroy his son Lonzo's career. Now, he has created so many enemies for his son, playing in Los Angeles, in a team that's rebuilding. And as much as I could say this, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, if LaVar Ball cares about his son Lonzo, he should probably find a time to shut his mouth. He should finally find a time to just not say anything. The fact that he's going to go out there and criticize the coach sounds like that nagging, dirty, disgusting parent that's standing behind a dugout or behind a bench or out on the sidelines that's going to second guess their son's coach and everything that he says. And we all know this parent that we're talking about. We've all played with him. We've played with the kid that has that parent in Little League. We've played with the kid that has that parent in high school or college, or anybody is lucky enough to be on a professional stage. You've seen that kid that comes with not the entourage, but the parent. And that parent has to understand that, number one, they're not their child. And number two, by speaking out and being that type of parent, you're destroying more opportunities for your kid than you're creating. And it's amazing that this is happening at the professional level. Because you see this stuff happen in Little League. You see this happen when, there's a bunch of kids out there just trying to have fun. And there's one parent just trying to live their life vociferously through their children. Maybe that parent just wasn't good enough as an athlete. Maybe that parent had opportunities, but just didn't live up to their expectations. But they see a child, the child has a little talent. Maybe the parent feels that the child has a little more talent than they really have. And they start to try to be that child. And I hope the LaVar Ball story can become more of a lesson to parents out there. And I hope that more parents will take this story and this man who is humiliating himself, but most of all, is making it very tough for his son to succeed. And rather than make it about whether you care for LaVar Ball or not, I'd rather it be about taking the lesson that needs to be learned from the way this guy is conducting himself. Because there's nothing about LaVar Ball's future that matters. He could do whatever he wants. He could be this entrepreneur. He could make millions and billions of dollars. And if he does that, good for him. But he is ruining the opportunity that his son has been given by being a number 2 overall pick in the NBA, having a chance to be a franchise player on an iconic franchise. And the message should go out there, and I hope every parent out there that has a child that's in athletics maybe is doing it to have fun, maybe is doing it to further themselves. Maybe they have a future playing. It doesn't matter what sport it is. And if you look and listen to what LaVar Ball is saying and doing, take it as a lesson as what not to do. Don't ever do that to your kid. If you love your children, especially children that are involved in athletics, do not conduct yourself the way LaVar Ball does. Set them up for the right programs. Get them involved with the right coaches. If you want to be an assistant coach, you want to be involved, that's fine. But don't do it in a way where you're destroying the opportunity of a kid. Because you know what? That kid's opportunity could be taken from them at any point. And I tell you, it even exists with Lonzo Ball. There's a chance a couple years down the road, if Lonzo Ball isn't cutting it, he might not have a job. This game, any game, I'm talking about any sport here, can be humbling, and it can happen very quickly to you. So just, if you take one message out of what I'm saying in regards to LaVar Ball, I'm not here to knock him anymore. I'm not. Who is LaVar Ball? Listen, I don't know who LaVar Ball is. I don't even know what he does for a living. All I know is that ESPN loves to get comments from him. Somebody's always willing to put a microphone in front of his face. And honestly, from this point forward, I could care less what this guy ever has to say. But for everybody that's a parent out there that has a child that's involved in sports, hopefully LaVar Ball was put on this planet to teach all parents how not to act when their children are involved in athletics. We'll be back with you tomorrow. The show will be available on YouTube. I'll put that together sometime tonight. Big thanks to Joe McIlvaine, currently the senior advisor of player personnel for the Baltimore Orioles, a long-time baseball executive, general manager for the Padres and the Mets in the 1990s. His days started back with Frank Cashen and the Baltimore Orioles. We'll be back with you tomorrow, 6 to 7 p.m. on Periscope, Facebook Live, and available on demand on YouTube. God bless you, and as always, I'll see you on the other side.